Aha, got it. So hello, we are live. So let me just sit down. We'll wait for some people to come along. Anybody there? Got to tidy up. Not too many weapons on the go. Let's have a look. I may have to adjust the camera. So, oh, good, somebody's watching. I will sit down. Now, I'm in my modern clothing because I've not really had a chance to. I could put a hat on though. I've not really had a chance to get any my Viking clothing out today to put them on. So, today's video is about this here, Egil's bolt rig. But first of all, we're going to wait for a few people to turn up as I put a few weapons away because I've got too many weapons on the go. And then I'll see if anybody leaving me comments here. And then when we've got a few people in the chat, we'll start. And I'm just going to do a kind of an in-depth chat about Egil's bolt rig and why I think it's a really, really great bit of kit. And we often call what we wear, you know, from your sea axes to your, you know, your bolt rigs to your, you know, to your knife. We often call it kit. It's a modern term, but it's just what we calls it. Anyway, let me see if I can find on my phone the live stream. Don't need that. And then I can see if anybody's leaving any comments, and I can also check my position on camera. I could have done this earlier whilst eating my dinner, but I don't think you lot want to see me eating fish and chips. And I'm full up now. It's what you get when you've worked hard all day. Oh yes. I suppose fish and chips in America aren't like fish and chips over here. So let's just go and have a look. Don't need that. It's one of our videos. Now, very recently, not long back, a few minutes ago, I published in the community page a video to the channel called Egil's Mustache Gaming. So if you go and check out, the guy that runs it is our #1 fan from Derby. In fact, he's the only person I've ever done a live stream with, other than Take here, who I've done one live stream with, and Egil Thorsson, who I did many live streams with. So if you go and check out that video in the community page, that would really, really help Thomas grow as a channel, because he's got some nice content and he revolves around wargaming, which is also a hobby I'm into, but I just never really incorporated wargaming on this channel. So I just keep playing that, and then I've got to pause this down. We'll wait for a few more people to come in, so bear with me. I'm multitasking here. I'm not doing a very good job. There we go. Let's just click live. So if anybody's got anything to say, let me move this out of the way. I don't need that here. That's another project for another day. I've got loads of projects like this, like this shield, which I've never put a boss on. And I'm drinking tea because I'm English. I'm thirsty. So, this bolt rig, let's have a look at it. And I'm kind of hoping that you can see it clearly enough. What I might do is adjust the camera so it points down at the table if you want me to. But why do I think that this bolt rig is brilliant? Well, first of all, it's very wide. So when you're wearing it, you know you're wearing it, and you know, it's not like a thin bolt which is going to dig into you. You know you got a good bolt on when you wear this. So that's one of the reasons why I like this bolt system. And I'll try to sort it out. It just needs sorting out actually, because it's all a little bit twisted. This is the back of it. But one thing I've noticed straight away is that this C-axe is on the one way round. It should be the opposite way round. So I'm going to have to try to take that off somehow. But I think what we're going to do, we are going to take everything off and put it back on again. So the first thing we got, I hope you can see it, is the knife of Egil Thorsson. This was his eating knife, and I sharpened it for him because it was very blunt. And also, and I did this on camera during a video, this bit of sewing here was all, falling to bits. So it needed re-sewing back up. So I did that live on camera. And this is a nice linen thread, which has been waxed. And the reason why you want to wax a thread is when you go round and you sew this up, if you've got waxed thread, it's more likely to last a lot longer than unwaxed thread. And also, if it starts to tear away and get a little bit cut, it also bonds in because of the wax. So a waxed thread is very important to have. And you can just buy some linen, or even wool. I've done it with wool before, where I got some wool and I just run it through some wax, and you end up with a waxy wool thread. As long as you got tough wool and it don't break, you're laughing. But in this case, this is linen thread, and it's Irish linen thread, but some of the best linen. And I waxed it beforehand. I've always got quite a bit of this wax thread about, so sometimes I just spend a couple of hours just running thread through some wax when I want to build up some more thread for sewing jobs. So that's the first thing. And I don't know, let me just show you on camera, because these are the sort of details which you don't really see on our videos, is the fact this is being worked with a design. It's got like a double S shape, and then it's got your typical lines going across in a hex pattern, and that's quite a normal thing. And it's not the best carving in the world for leather, and I think Egil did that himself, but it sticks out, and it's a nice little bit of a detail. And sometimes having those nice fine details on your kit makes a difference. It's a bit like his knife as well. As you can see on his knife, he's got a couple of inscriptions and runes there, and he's got his name on the knife itself. And he told me this handle is turned out of ash, so it's an ash handle, and it's got a blind taper, so it doesn't come out the end. So it kind of goes in about, probably about 2/3 of the knife. The tang does. So that's very nice. Also, a very nice broken back knife, nicely tapered here to there. And we often think about knives being quite big. Somewhere I've got one. There we go. So this is like the daddy of the sea axes. This is a real beast of a knife. But often they were very, very small indeed, and they were tiny. And often in Viking graves and Anglo-Saxon graves and the graves at a time, you'll find knives of this size and this size, but not often this size, because that's a lot more money and value because of the amount of metal compared to a knife like this. So you just bear with me. So let's put that over there. So that's his knife, and I think that's absolutely wonderful. Let's make sure you can see it on camera. So the next thing, what I'm also going to do is when I talk through about his web, I'll change the position of the camera, and we're going to have a look for his pouches, because I can't actually remember what's in them. Another thing he has is a very nice strap end. In fact, I have made a few of these. I've actually got some casting sand, and I managed to push this into the sand, and then I worked the rivets out so it was plain again. So I've actually very recently cast some of these, and at some point I'm going to send one of these to Martin of Belfast so that he can have a bit of a memory about Egil. If you would like, if you see this later on, Martin, please let me know. And at some point when I got a spare one of these cast, I'm going to post it to you. And whether you want to keep it in your pouch as a little memory of Egil, I think that would be really nice to do for you, because I know you was a big fan. So that's his little pouch, and we're all going to put it all back together. Now this knife, we've got to take it off this end, so we've got to take this pouch off next. And we're going to put it all back together. So there's another pouch. And typical Egil, he's got some paint on it. And then we're going to slide this knife off, because it does need to be put back together correct, because it's upside down. It should be this way. So what I could do actually, instead of taking it off, I could probably, if I can twist this round carefully, there we go, and that will correct it again, so that when I put it back on, and where on camera the C-axe is facing the right way I want it to be, which is the handle there. I'm not having the handle on this side because this is your dominant hand for your C-axe and your sword or your larger knife. And so if you're trying to grab it out that way, it's a lot more difficult to do. So generally, they always had the C-axe pointing to the right. So that's good. And this isn't his original C-axe. This original one, which I gave to Rob, has been buried with his ashes, so that when he goes to the next life, which he is now, he's in Valhalla, he's got a good knife with him. And that was very important for us. And he's also got some very nice silver mounts on this bolt. In fact, I've taken 2 off because I'm casting some of these mounts to have a whole set of them on another bolt system. And then I'll put the mounts back on. But I don't know whether you could see that on camera. Let's see if I can show you. I don't think that picks up on camera. It's like a face. Very nice. Now the bolt itself, we will measure the width of the bolt. Give you an idea. And it is, I would say it's about 1.5 inches. So that's going to equate to around about 32, 34 millimeters or 3.4 centimeters, around about that. So again, very thick bolt. And this used to be his granddad's. He's had this bolt for many years. And his granddad served in World War One. And this is what he brought back from the battlefield. And Egle had it for many years. And when Monday decided to have it converted into a Viking bolt. And this is what he did. And he's got a very nice buckle. The buckle was plain, but I went and stamped it for him with some triangular stamps and some rings and dots just to give it a bit more decoration, because Egle was quite high up in status as a Viking, and I thought that was quite important to him to kind of show that wealth. And of course, we've got a C-axe on this knife, on this bolt, so very nice C-axe indeed. And I think I paid about £65 for this. It was quite expensive, but the guy that used to have had it before me used to play King Harold. So you could say it's a C-axe belonging to the king. You know, probably got it off his dead body. So let's see if I can show you a bit of a closer up of the buckle itself. So that's a really nice example of a Viking buckle, quite a wide one as well. And it always pays to have an iron bar on your buckle to go in your belt rather than a copper one, because they will bend. But that just needs bending back a little bit because it's had so much use. So I hope that's picking up. Yeah. Now we've got a comment here, so let me read this comment. So yeah, close up of the handle. Of course you can. That's Ryan Powell says, can we get a close look of the handle, please? So on this handle, just been turned on a lathe. It's got 2 lines kind of carved in here. From when it's been turned, the person carving it would have put these 2 lines in, and then they've been darkened up afterwards. And here we've got 3 lines. And then at some point, Egil inscribed his name, and we've got a little circle with a cross. And we've got the same design as we got on the knife itself, which is like a double S shape knocking over each other. So, and again, you show that end of it. I hope the camera's picking it up. It is a very nice knife, and you can tell the age because it's so polished in the hand, whereas a brand new knife, you know, you wouldn't have that effect. So that's been worn and used a lot over 20-30 years of Egil being a Viking and going around schools and museums and of course going to events. And at some point it was very blunt and he asked me to sharpen it, so I did, and now it's very sharp. And he used to take this to banquets, so it's not one for combat because it's a sharp knife, and you should never have a sharp knife on combat. You should always have a blunt knife. And if you're going to a weekend reenacting the Viking history, you will get pulled up if you went on the battlefield with this, because the training officer will say, yeah, you can't take a sharp knife on. You either put it in your pouch, which probably would be acceptable, or leave it in your tent. So I hope that kind of gives it justice. I mean, the blade could do with a bit of a polish again, because it's been You know, it's an old blade, but I'm just going to leave it as it is. It's got a bit of a damage there from some time ago when Egil chipped it, he said. And the thing is, it feels nice in the hand, which is, again, a very important factor. And in fact, when you got it in the hand, these 3 lines kind of give it a bit more of a grip. So this is one of the reasons why we got these 2 lines here have been put in by the person who turned it on a lathe, and you got 3 here, so it does give you that extra grip. And as if you're going into proper Viking battle, that extra grip is very important, because you don't want your knife to slip out of your hand. And of course, you could do a lot of damage with this knife. It's just wonderful, isn't it? So, and I'm so happy that, you know, it's still here and it's not been lost to time, because we'll treasure it and remember it. And I said it's got a lovely little pouch. Now the back of the pouch, not sheath, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. It's just got a very simple sewing on it. Just so the leather strap is just sewn at the top. It's very simplistic indeed. There's no carving on the back. Or is there? Actually, yes, there is. You can see some carving on the back. I don't know whether it'll pick it up, but there is some carving on the back, which is quite unusual, because normally any leather carving is on the front. So that's a nice feature, and it looks like one of the beasts from one of the inscriptions, or it could be a man. You probably won't see it on camera, which is a shame, but yes, it's wonderful. So let's just go back. So we've got a comment here from Brian Ketteran. He says, hi, hello Brian, I hope you're all right, and thank you for joining the live stream. And we have another comment from Ryan Powell. Says, thank you, kind sir. Well, you're more than welcome, because we aim to please on this channel, and we like to entertain but also educate. We entertain and educate at the same time. So that's his knife. So in a minute we're going to look through these pouches. Yeah. I mean, I don't have a bolt this thick. All my bolts will be half the diameter of this. So when I do wear them, you do know you're wearing a thin bolt, because it digs in more. It don't feel as secure as this bolt system does on your system. So I think Egil was very wise. Another nice feature is it's not riveted. So this is a mounting plate, and on the back you'll see it's got 2 nails put through, and instead of being riveted, the nails are just knocked over and being pushed back into the leather. So that's quite a unique way of keeping this little brass mounting plate, because you do need one of these with your buckle, because it adds extra strength, and you've got to have some way to keep your buckle on your bolt. So that's why you have a mounting plate. And again, you've got an iron metal bar to go through the holes, which is quite essential. 1 or 2 of my bolts have got brass bars, and they bend over time, and you have to re-bend them back all the time. And whether that's been designed to be not bent, I don't know. Probably so. So it probably should be left as it is. So that's the bolt itself. I'm assuming that this mount here is actually a kind of a figure of Odin. It looks like Odin to me, but I could be mistaken. It could be Thor, for instance. But again, it's a very nice mount, and there's a massive problem with traders. There's not enough decent traders that make bolt mounts for a reasonable price, because if you wanted to mount this bolt up with all the mounts, you'd be spending £10-15 on it just for one mount. So if you got 20, that's going to cost you £300 on a bad day. And if you want them to be made out of silver, then you could probably double that money. So, yes. Let's just measure the length of this bolt to see how long it is, if we can. You have to bear with me as I get this little ruler out, and then we're going to try to calculate the length. And I'm going to calculate it from the end of the strap to the end of the buckle. And I'm going to have to measure it, and then measure it slightly more, and try to get it flat as possible. Remember where I've got 35 inches there. We're going to put this down roughly in the same area. I am qualified to measure things. I am an engineer, and that's 16. So that's altogether, that's 51 inches. Now, Egil, of course, was a bigger chap than me. I'm quite lean and mean, where Egil had a bit of a tummy, because he was much older and he liked his food and his ale, and when he had some. So that's quite a big bolt. Now let's put it on. Let's just test it. because I'm not wearing any Viking clothing today, so you'll see it's got quite a lot of room for a start. And it's a very tight fitting as well. You have to wiggle it about a little bit. And generally, what we do with a bolt system, we have it where you want it, but you never leave it like this because that's a bad idea. So you always tuck it in at the back. And this is one of the reasons why you have a strap end, because it adds that extra weight. And it also says you got that extra bit of corn and bit of wealth. And then you pull it through. And again, you try to adjust it and pull it through again. And so it ties a knot. If you do that on your bolt system, you're never going to lose your bolt. You'd have to snap and break, which could happen in battle. So that's quite nice. Of course, when Egil used to wear it, it was pretty much about there. So, you know, he wasn't that much bigger than me. So that's that. It just feels nice. This is what I love about it. So, yes, oh, hello. So, I was demonstrating this, Martin. At some point, I'm casting a few of these. Would you like me to send you one? It costs you nothing. I'll send it to you when I've got some spare, so that you can have a bit of Egil's kit in your pouch. Would you like that, Martin? Because I think that would be quite nice for you, because you did really like Egil. And what I did very recently, I got some casting sand, and I managed to get a nice profile in the sand. So I'm melting some pewter down. So I've got a lot of pewter, and I'm casting a few of these. I'm doing one for Eirik and a couple for myself. But I thought this for a while, that perhaps you might like one as well, Eirik, Martin. So if you would, let me know, and at some point I will get one in the post. So the next thing we're going to look at, and I'm going to adjust the camera for this. So leave that with me, Martin. Because we're very generous on this channel, and we like to help our friends, and I think it would be nice to spread a bit of Egil's kit about the world. So the next bit we're going to look at is little pouches. He had two on his belt system. At one point I did make him a pouch, but he complained, said, no, you got too much on my belt. And the one thing that we are missing is his Viking axe loop, where he used to keep his axe. That's somewhere in my collection. I put to one side and I can't find it. So then we got a comment, yes please, my bolt is nice and a fat size. So yeah, leave that with me. So the first one we're going to look at, and I don't know what's in there, and I hope the camera's picking it up nice. It's this little pouch made of leather. It's got a nice leather thong, which is definitely what you want. And we're going to put it out. Now, I know what this is. This is this little fire starter set. So when you used to demonstrate on camp, and the one thing it won't have in here, well, no, it does, it's got a bit of wool. So this is a fire starter little bag he used to carry. Make sure there's nothing else in there. No, there's a bit more wool. So that's your fire starter. You got a bit of flint. And then you got, I think this is varieties, which you could use to get a spark, as you can see. And this is a flint, handmade by Smithy. Very essential bit of kit for a Viking. And then you would have this underneath, and you'll be trying to, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to set my table on fire, but you'd be basically running, you know, or you could run the flint down and it will create a spark. But I'm not so used to doing this. I'll definitely use a bit of this. I think it's priorities, but I may be wrong. And you can tell how smooth it is. It's been well worn. Normally, you look at this section, this is quite rough. But this one, you can tell he's been doing it a lot with this bit of stone. So this must have been his favourite one to use. And it could, in theory, spark. And that's how you'd light your fire. And fire was very essential, because without fire, if you was out, you know, in the wild, if you was going away trading, or you was going to war, you had to have some ability at night, especially during the winter and late autumn and early spring, to keep yourself warm. So a Viking would have something like this. Now it does make you think, and I think Sam Stapleton was on about this, would they have had a wooden box? And if you look on the community page a few days ago, I did share a little wooden tinder box which was found in, I think it was in Norway, when some ice receded, and they're speculating that that was a tinderbox. But it does make you think whether they had such things as tinderboxes, or would they simply have kept their fire starter kit in a little pouch like this. And let's just measure this pouch so you know how big it is. Oh, so yeah, I'm doing it wrong because you hold this in your hand and you do it this way rather than have that, which kind of shows you my expertise on this subject isn't brilliant, because I did that wrong then. So you strike with your flint going down, because what the problem is, on modern camp we've got matches and fire lighters and lighters, so we don't often demonstrate lighting a fire authentically. So, and perhaps it's something I should have a go at learning, and then we could demonstrate on the channel. But let's just measure this pouch, so if anybody's interested in the size of a Viking leather pouch of a well-seasoned Viking warrior, because Egil he was very well seasoned. I think he started reenacting was around about the mid 1980s, maybe even earlier. So it shows you. So I'm going to give you this measurement in metric and imperial. So the overall height of this bag is 5 inches, which is going to be roughly 12.5 centimeters. And then I'll have to stretch it out a little bit because of the age of it. It's tapered in because of the age. So it is a rectangular pouch, but we'll measure at the bottom. So it's 4 inches, and that will be around about 4 inches. That's 10 centimeters. I should know that. So that's what's in that little pouch, and I think that's fascinating. And I bet he's had that in that pouch for years and years and years. So he's going to be older than some of the guys and girls that watch this channel. But I do have a little pouch myself with a fire kit, but I can't find it. It's in my house, and I think it's lost in my attic. So let's just go and look at some more of your comments. Because I do love reading your comments, and I do thank you for watching this live stream and how you're liking this vertical format. I'm here. I know you're probably seeing me headless now and thinking, oh God, where's Braggy gone? He's lost his head. Adjusted it. Yeah, you can see me again. So, Joxy, so welcome to the channel, Joxy. It says, have you ever worked with cast iron? Well, only in the sense of like rolling cast iron up and working in that sense, but not in the sense of actually working with cast iron. But one of our friends of the channel, who's no longer here, Teto Sagers, was one of the first people in the 1980s and early 90s to go to China, and he was casting statues of that famous cricketer and bringing them back in mass numbers. So yes. So no. So and I do have a funny story about cast iron. When I used to work in an engineering factory, one of the local country estates had a cast iron statue of like an angel, and it was all cracked and falling to bits. So they kind of said, well, could you repair it? So it got brought to work in the van carefully, and so it had a big statue about 6-7 foot high, and a lot of the cracks were on the back. So one of the guys called Ron was going to roll it all up because he was a spectacular roller. But he said what you should do, he said you should where the cracks end, we should drill a hole to stop the cracks from spreading. So they started doing this. They got all these cracks on the back, started drilling the hole where the cracks were ending, and then the arse of the statue fell out. But in the end, they did actually manage to get this statue repaired, and it's still there at this country estate after being repaired. So I went to Joxy says, I went to a medieval festival at Furness Abbey in Cumbria, and they set up an iron forge. The smith helped me to design a keychain attachment showing a knight and sword. Well, that's very cool. And I've always wanted to get together an outdoor blacksmith workshop for a portable one. It'll be like a wooden frame forge with a lot of sand in it and then clay on top. But I never really got around to doing that because I wouldn't mind actually going to some events and actually demonstrating a bit of blacksmithing And I am quite lucky because I do own a blacksmith workshop, and it's got 3 forges in there. And I bought that off Derby Industrial Museum about 10 years back, and I paid £500 for his whole entire workshop. And there's so much kit, you know. I had like 50 pairs of tongs and, you know, 40 hammers. So I got a tremendous amount of money's worth of forging equipment. So I am quite lucky in that sense. But I never had enough time to spend that time working on projects. And of course, I'm always editing videos. So, yeah. So that's really nice of that blacksmith to make you a keychain. And it was made out of cast iron, which is not the most easiest material to work with. Of course, I think cast iron is a bit later than I appeared, but I could be wrong. So Rob Napier says, and I did say it earlier, says, steel strikes the flint, Braggy. Yes. I'm just so unpracticed when it came to this subject. And I wish I got Egle to sit down actually and talk about it on camera and demonstrate, because that would have been wonderful. And then we have the Viking, Martin Brown. So I hope Martin is okay, and Rob and everybody. Says, I thought the box was for coins, and some found in Ireland had coins in them. Well, possibly so. I mean, no doubt boxes would have been available, but I think this find, they're talking about the fact that it seems to have material in for starting a fire. So that's why they're speculating that it might be a tinderbox. But I think Oslo Cultural Museum of History is still doing some research on that box. But I did have a look online, but there don't seem to be a lot of evidence for tinderboxes in the period. I think tinderboxes are generally a much later thing, probably late medieval, but certainly the ones I've seen from the 17th and 18th century, quite unique, but have a sliding lid and normally hang from you know, maybe your fireside or from a beam. So Joxy says, the funny thing is, it was quite cold and rainy that day, so loads of people huddled around the forge for warmth. Aha, well, yes. And they are very warm indeed, because there's a lot of heat built up in the forge. And then Joxy says, I've still got the keychain to this day. I got it nearly 10 years ago. Well, that's brilliant, and that's a nice memory for you. And certainly I remember Teto telling me a story when he was on camp at a living history museum, and this Viking woman came up to him, all excited, to say, "Oh, I got a new iron brooch." And he said, "Oh, how much did you pay for that?" He said, "Oh, £20 online." And so at this village was a blacksmith. So he said, "Can I borrow it for it?" So he got this brooch. I don't think I've got one. Wait a minute. Hang on a minute. I got one to demonstrate it, because you're in the Viking room. So what he was talking about was one of these, and it's a penannular brooch. So this woman came up and said, "Oh look, I got a new penannular brooch," and I said, "How much?" £20. And so he said, "Can I borrow it for a few minutes?" So he went away, and then half an hour later he came back with 10 of them. He said, "I just got the blacksmith to make a load for me, £2-3 each." But of course, another aspect about the penannular brooch is the pin. It's quite deadly, and again, could be one of those secret weapons if you get captured. I think I talked about this in the video. You know, if you get captured for ransom, they're going to take off all your weapons. You know, you're not having that. You might escape, but if you're lucky and they don't take this off you, then you've always got a weapon to stab somebody to try to get you escape. And let's face it, you know, these are pointy and will do some damage, if not kill you. You know, that in the neck and you're a dead man or woman. So yeah. So that's that. So let's go and look at this pouch next, and then I'll adjust the camera so you can look down, and we'll find out together what is in Egil's pouch. And I think I have to do this for a video in long play format as well. And then we're going to put the bolt system back together again before we end the live stream, because I've got to get a bath and think about work tomorrow. So we're going to adjust the camera so I'm not going nowhere. And I'll get a drink of my cup of tea, because I'm very thirsty. So the Viking Martin Brown says, I bought one on eBay for £1.99p. Well, yes. I mean, I bought a couple of really cheap ones off eBay, and Etsy, you know, £3 or £4 and a really good value. But I have made quite a few of them myself, and I used to sell them myself on Etsy. I think I was charging £7 or £8 for one. That was before I got into making content. I was making Viking things online, and then I was reselling. And then I was also reselling wargame figures, because quite locally to me, it's one of the biggest international wargame dealers in the world. And I used to go around and he used to fill my entire car up with wargame stuff and says, come back in 3 months and give us a couple £100 and you can have another lot. And he would literally fill my car up with wargame junk, which he did not want to deal with. So now we have this pouch. Let's just try to get the camera just a little bit more. Where I need a camera person called Bob to do it all for me. I can only dream of such luxuries. So again, you can tell this is a very old patch because it naturally tapers in. With a new patch, it will still be quite fresh and it will still be rectangular. But because he's had that hanging from his belt for many years, you can just tell it's old, and it's a nice bit of leather. And I have treated the leather quite a few times for him because I used to look after his kit. Because he wasn't brilliant at looking after his kit. He'll just throw it in the back of his car or in his little house flat. But so we're gonna have a look in here. I don't know what's in here. This is going to be it's another pouch straight away. So we've got a bonus pouch to open in a minute. What else have we got in here? Right, we've got a coin, a rather bent coin to be fair. Oh, we've got another pouch. I don't know what that is. Oh, we've got an ingot. I gave him that. So he's got a bit of coin and roll. And we've got another coin. So you look at that coin now, how bent it is. From years and years of being in this pouch. That's not flat, that's bent, that is. Let's just try to demonstrate it on this knife. You can see how bent, and I won't straighten it, I'll leave it as it is. In his memory. And if I was an expert with coins, I'll be able to tell you what it is, but it's so worn as well. It kind of shows you the low quality of the material because it's worn, but it's never been chipped, or it's never been, nobody's gone round with a pair of snips and tried to reduce the value. And then this one is a much better quality coin. In fact, I know who made that. That's from Dave the Moneyer. Again, I couldn't really tell you what the coin is. And it's so fine detail, I can't even work out. Oh, yes, you can just see a face. So it's one of the kings. So there's a king's face on that. So that could be Alfred. I think that's a Saxon coin, that is. That looks like Alfred the Great to me. And then what have we got in this little pouch? Because there's nothing else in here. Come on. Oh, no, wait a minute. What was that? Something fell on the floor then. Ah. We've got another coin. Egil's being crafty and hiding his coins in his little pouch. So, and that's a much smaller coin. Again, very similar to this style. That's a different manufacturer, and that's been slightly chipped. That has, I can tell it's got a flat edge. Well, it makes you think they're probably 20, 30 years old at least, maybe 35. They could even be 40 years old. But that's new because I made that for him, and I've got loads of these. I used to just get a piece of wood and carve that shape into the wood, and then whenever I went to car boots, I was buying, tankers of pewter, and then I would melt them down and make ingots. So what have we got in here? Oh, right, this is quite unique. We got his sharpening stone. Again, this is quite essential for sharpening your knife. It's got a nice chip in it. I've got one of them, but it's much bigger. And then we've got a bit of cordage as well, because you never know when you needed a bit of cordage. I made that for him. I made a few things over the years for Egle. And I tell you now, making cordage like this is really, really hard work on your hands. But that would be a peace tie to go round a knife or a sword. And especially in the lights of Wessex, you needed one. Anyway, Rob Napier says, got to go and bail. Take care. Well, same to you, Rob, and look after yourself, my friend. So Joxy says, how would you maintain those pouches? They must have gotten a lot of use centuries ago. Or would weather keep them from drying? Well, you'll probably get your animal fat. So you know, you butcher a cow or, you know, go to a sheep, and you're going to have excess fat, mutton fat, or you're going to have beef fat, which we call dripping. So you'll definitely cover that in your pouch to keep it moist. Now, in the modern world, we wouldn't really do that, because one disadvantage of using animal fats, you can get a slight bit of mould on your leather. So what we would use is something like neat's foot oil. But another alternative, if you can't go out and afford to go and spend £20 on a tin of neat's foot oil, you could use olive oil, because that's also very good for leather. I wouldn't recommend using veg oil, because the same instance with animal fat, if you put veg oil on here, what will happen is that you can get mould on your leather, especially if you get a bit of cloth and you go along with a bit of veg oil. And I've done that myself. But if you don't wipe it off afterwards and give it a good clean to get rid of that excess residue, you can get mould on your leather. So again, of course, it's not the worst situation in the world when you get mould on your leather, because simply you can just go and wipe it off, and a bit of boiling water, give it a wash with, you can go out and pick some plants that will make a bit of a soapy residue, and then give it a clean, let it dry, and re-oil it again. So in the Vikings times, they would have kept all the fat from the animals for various purposes, and one of them would be for going over your leather, and it will make it darker. It will, if you did it with this leather, it will go much darker like this again, because that's dry, and I can tell that from my experience. And again, you would also level up the thongs, because you don't want them to break. So by keeping it moist, by keeping it in that position where it is nice and moist with whatever you treat it with, it's going to guarantee it's going to last a long time. And so the Vikings and the Saxons especially, or all those cultures of history, were very clever at managing the stuff. But of course, they also lost stuff, because this is how we find things, especially metal detectors, because you're in battle and you got this on a boat, and somebody attacks you with a sword or a knife and cut your your thong, which is a leather thong, not a thong you wear like to do the day, ladies. But yeah. And also beeswax is also another great thing you could use for your leather, and then you could actually make kind of a, I've forgotten how to, but many years ago I used to have the ability to get beeswax, and because my dad was a beekeeper, I got lots of beeswax. I got little chunks like that, massive chunks of it. So you could also use beeswax, and you can make a kind of a mixture from other things and heat it up, and you're going to end up with a nice solid wax. When it cools down, you could put in a little bowl, or you could, a wooden turn bowl would be great, and then you could have that on the side in your workshop for going around. You wipe it and go over it. So yes, it's a very important aspect of maintaining your kit, because if you don't maintain your kit, you're going to end up with a massive problem, because you're going to lose things. And leather was such a valuable material back in those days, because in order to get your leather bolt, you had to butcher a cow. But you're not going to butcher a cow just for the leather. You're going to use the entire cow, from the brains, to the skull. You're going to smash the skull up for the bones to dry afterwards. You want to use it in a forging process or bone milled, because we think about Vikings and Saxons not having gardens, but they did, but not in the same sense of what we do. They would have had little small gardens for herbs and for plants, which they knew could get rid of your headache, or they'd have some mint growing to settle their stomachs, and they'll have more of those problems than what we did, because the diet was poorer. So yes, fascinating subject, and I do hope you enjoy what we're talking about here. So that is what is in this pouch. Now what we're going to do, we're going to put a couple of these things back in. This is a linen little sack, and it's got a little bit of decoration on, and again it shows the age because it's got a bit of oil and blacking to it. And again, I say, oh, there's some oats in here. Oh, look, it's got a dice. So when Egil would have gone, this is a bone dice. So Egil would have gone along. He may have done a bit of gambling, because dice are a very old thing. Goes back way to the Roman times, do dice. But I got a load of Roman dice I made years ago. But and you can tell that's bone because of the way it looks. So yeah, I didn't know that was in there. So we'll put that back in there like that. But you want to keep it safe. And we'll put his little ingot in here. And again, the reason why you'd have an ingot is because you're showing your wealth off. So yeah, you may have a few coin, but this is hack silver. Now out of this you can make coin, and out of this you can make bracelets. But as I often told, there you were, there's the Viking, a Norwegian man, and he's been raiding. Let's say he's gone to Anglo-Land to go and raid some monasteries and churches, and he's come back in his longship, sailed across the ocean, and it's getting towards the time of year where the weather's getting bad, and it's got a good way to go. Now storms arise from the north and come down, and he realises, Eirik, that he's not going to get back home that season. And so what did they do? Did they continue to sail in the long ships and try to get back home? Well, no, because that would most certainly end your life and you losing your long ship. And so you're sailing along the coast of Norway. You've got a few hundred leagues to go, but you see an inlet. And so you sail in the inlet, and you sail at the end of the fjord, and you see some long houses. And so you get your boat, your long ship, and you beach it on the beach, and you and your men all jump out, and you go to the longhouse. You go to the biggest longhouse. You wouldn't go to the smallest longhouse because you want to go to the family that's got the most food and the most wealth, because they're going to look after you. And so you go up to the longhouse, you knock on the door, you say, "Hey up, I'm Eirik. We've just come back from raiding and we're not going to get back home. Can you put us up?" And there's old Ulf with a big long beard, because he's done his days sailing and he's done his days raiding, and he says, "All right." And Eirik says, "See that there? That's yours, that is." Now that, in the Viking times and Saxon times, would be worth a lot of money if it was silver. And most of the time it would be silver, because pewter isn't worth as much. So Eirik would have got an axe. Never got an axe, no. In this case, he would have got a knife, and he would have gone bang and chopped it in half. And he said, "There you are, Ulf. That's half your payment for looking after me and my men. We want mead, we want some good bedding, and we want some good food over winter. And then when spring's here, I'll give you the other half." And he would have kept his word, because your word was an important thing in those days. It's something that we have lost in our culture, is that ability to keep our word. So Eirik would have said in springtime, "There you are, there's your other half of your ingot. Thank you very much." And that would have paid for all the meat and the lodgings for the winter time. And then when the weather was fine, Eirik would have sailed back home. And then a few months later, he would have sailed off again on another adventure to go and get some more coin and take some more things of those very nice Christians, because they was rich and they was wealthy. And the reason why they liked taking stuff from Christians, and taking Christians themselves, because the Christian slaves, or the nothings as they called them, the nethlings, were obedient. So Christian slaves were very obedient. And of course in Viking culture you could be caught as a slave, you could be made a free man, you could be given a knife, saying you're now a freeman. And that person who started his life in Viking culture in a very bad way as a slave could end up being a jarl or even a king. And those sort of things happened, and I find that to be fascinating. So yes, so let's just read some more of your comments. And thank you for all the people watching, because we've never had this many people watching. And I think it's partly because of the format we're streaming in. It's the vertical format. And if you're new to YouTube, I do recommend live streaming when you can. So we've got a couple more comments. So, Joxy says, "I never thought about beeswax used for that purpose. That's interesting." Well, beeswax is such a great thing and it has so many uses. And again, when you're getting your thread, so if I was going to sew something up, let's say I was away on camp or on war and this pouch split, and I've got this leather cord or this bit of linen cord in my bag, not leather, I would get some wax and I'd run this through the wax quite a few times. I'd have the wax in my hand. I'll demonstrate this on camera one day, and I'd keep running it through the wax until it became coated. And you could always tell when a thread is waxy, because it won't be loose like this, it will be very rigid. And then you can sew up your pouch, and then you can guarantee that thread's going to last a good while. And when you get to the point in the history of the pouch when the thread goes, well, you just turn it inside out and you sew it back up again. And if it's a bit, around the edge. It's a bit worn. You get a knife and you'll cut it again and reuse it. You wouldn't throw it away if you could. So yes, and it's fascinating. They recycled things so much, but at the same time they also threw a lot of stuff away because, you know, there's a limit of something. Everything has a limit when it comes to the age of the item. And of course, as a Saxon or a Viking, you want to be buried with the things you like. So you'd be buried with your pouch, maybe. You'd be buried with a nice knife. Not one probably this big, probably more one of this size, to take with you to the afterlife. And so grave goods is such an important thing. And even today, in today's modern culture, when people pass away and they get buried with things alike. Now, I know this personally because I had a very good friend of mine. His name was Smokey, because he smoked a pipe. And he passed away back in 2012. And he was a lovely man, was Smokey. And when we buried him in his American Civil War uniform. And we gave him a good pipe and a nice pouch of tobacco. And I put a can of beer in his pocket. And so he had all these things. He had a pair of drumsticks. All the things that he valued, he took with him to the next life. And he's buried now in where he's buried, up near Liverpool, with all these wonderful objects. So 1,000 years from now, somebody will come along and dig him up and say, oh, look at this. This must have been a can of beer, and this must have been remains of a drumstick, or they may not even know what those items are. So, yes. So we've got a comment here from Rosie in the Posies. So hello, and a warm welcome to the channel. And they say, hello from the United States. This is interesting. Like and subscribe. Well, thank you very much. If you do not know who I am Braggy Magnuson. And I am the creator of this channel. And I've been on YouTube for many, many years, but I've always wanted to do a Viking channel. And the reason why we started it was a way to get a database of traditional stories told in the traditional way, where you could imagine you are 1,000 years ago or 1,400 years ago, back in the Saxon times, being told a story. And we were very lucky to have people like Egil Thorsson told some wonderful stories, and I hope he comes back. And we were very lucky that after Egil left the channel, for various reasons, Egle came along. And without Egil disappearing off the channel, we never would have had Egle, because both Egil and Egle didn't fundamentally get on very well back in those days, which is a shame. And you should never fall out with your good friends, because I often say in life, and this is such a true saying, that good friends will break up. Well, bad friends break up and never make up ever, but good friends break up and make up. And that is a sign of good friendship. And yeah, you can easily fall out with somebody. I've fallen out with Egle once, but we made up. I said sorry and he said sorry, and we gave each other a big hug, went for a few beers, and it was like it never happened. Because that is a sign of a man. This is a sign of somebody that says, yeah, I can step back and I can see the bigger picture. And I think that's wonderful. And so we got to the point of the channel in 2018. That's when Egle joined, and we made some marvellous content. Viking weapons, stories from the ancient, from the Viking gods. We talked about slavery. I remember doing a video when Prince Harry was getting married, and I talked about how that's going to be a disaster, and it kind of is, isn't it? But another story, and we're not too keen on politics on this channel. But and then since that, we've had Eric join the channel, who's one of my best friends in life, and he's like my little brother, and I love him to bits. And anybody's fundamentally welcome to come on this channel, including Martin. If you ever wanted to film some videos for us, Martin, and be a host on this channel, then you're more than welcome, because I know you've got a lot of knowledge to give to the world. So let's go back to some of these pouches. So yeah, I just got a couple more comments, and we'll go back to this pouch, and we're going to explore what is in this pouch, because I do not know what's in this pouch, and I'm very keen to find out. So we've got a big nice smiley face from Rosie in the Posies. That's a lovely name, that is, and it says nice. And then Viking Martin Brown says pizza, laughs out loud. Oh yes, I do love a good pizza, but what's your favourite topping? Now for me, I like pepperoni, a bit of sweet corn, ham, and that may be Irish sending me a message. He's probably sending me the latest Dave the Cat video he's making. And then I also like a bit of pineapple on a pizza. I know it's controversial, but pineapple just adds that bit of sweetness. And when it's cooked nice, when it's nice and crisp, it's to die for. So, and then we've got Joxy says, I came across your channel late last year and can say it's an excellent and interesting. This is the first live stream I watched and learned a hell of a lot already. Keep it up, Joxy from Blackburn. Well, thank you very much, Joxy. And I mean, I'm not educated like Egil was. Egil had a degree in archaeology, studied at York University. Turkey has a degree in English literature, studying Anglo-Saxon and Viking poetry and prose and writing. I'm an engineer by trade, so I'm the least qualified to talk about such things, but yet I find myself in the world of academia talking about such subjects, and I find it fascinating. And it's partly because I've got 30 years of experience, and also because I've got a vast library of books. So I read a lot, and I listen to people, and I learn all the time. So and that's wonderful. So and we've got some lovely emojis of pineapple pizza and a big yum face. I really must go out one of these days and actually buy a book on emojis so I can actually figure out what some emojis are. Because some days I think, what's that? And I do like to use emojis in my video titles and in the description because they're trending and they're very popular. So yes. So next we're going to put these 3 coins. And at some point, I'll do the same thing, but with my pouches. I've got a lot of coins in my pouch. In fact, at one point, I had a pouch and I was carrying about 50 to 80 ounces of silver in a pouch I used to have on my belt because I was demonstrating that I was wealthy and I could afford such things. And they're all very much like this. But somewhere in this room, that's where they are. And this room is just full of Viking things, and I love it. So we've been in that pouch. So next one, we're going to look into this pouch next. Does anybody have any guesses of what could be in here? Because I do not know. And I'd love to find out. And Martin says, I know nothing. I'm a chef, but I bet you cook some wonderful food, Martin. So again, we're going to. Again, if you look at this pouch, again, you'll see very much like this pouch, how it tapers in because of the age and the fact it's been hanging off a bolt. So that's age has done that, and the weight of what's in it. And it's quite weighty. If I had a set of scales, I would weigh them for you. But so the notorious one, do you cook crack or meth? No. I've had a smoke in my time, but I've never done nothing like crack or meth. I mean, that's very popular in America, isn't it? But to look at the damage it's doing to society. And, you know, I think it's always a bit controversial about whether the Vikings would have taken magic mushrooms and stuff like that, but they knew about such things. I mean, there's lots of cases in the medieval age where people are going mad, and that's simply because of ergot of rye, which is a fungus, a hallucinogenic fungus, which grows on wheat. So there you are, you've got a big wheat field, you know, 2 acres big. As a farmer, and you're going along at the end of the year, you know, autumn time, chopping down your wheat, but some of your wheat has got mould and damp, and the mould has developed, and you got ergot of rye on your wheat. And so you grind up your wheat into flour and you make bread out of it. And then suddenly there's old Ulf down the road, out of his mind, tripping his tits off, you could say, because he's by mistake eating some hallucinogenic bread. And that did happen. There's lots of accounts of people going crazy. And of course, in the medieval times, they would have said, oh, that's the devil that is doing that, because they didn't have the same understanding of what we do. So, yes. So, Martin said, I have 40 silver and 6 gold coins. I'm jealous because I don't have any silver coins or any gold coins. All mine are pewter. She's a witch. I love you guys to bits. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put this back in here. And then I'm also going to put Egil's knife. This is Egil's little pattern welded knife he gave me. And it's pattern welded, and it's a very nice fine knife on a bit of antler. So let's put that back in there. That's where it belongs. And then we're going to have a look in here. Let's move that over there. So yeah, so I was thinking about this video earlier at work, so how fascinating it will be. So the first thing I found is another ingot. So again, Egil's showing his wealth of, as a Viking, he's got 2 ingots. And that's a lot of money's worth, because that's a few coins in that. And quite interesting when you think about the Vikings and the Saxons being taxed. But, you know, we talk about the modern world where people evade tax. And I've done that myself, which is another story. But it's not a new thing, evading tax. It is a very old thing. So there you are. There's Egil. He's got a nice long house and a nice estate. And every 2 years he has to go and get his silver coins. We'll have to go back in here again. So bear with me. So let's say this year he's made 3 coins in profit. And he's got 2 ingots. And so what he has to do every 2 years, or sometimes it's 3, I think it's 2 years, he has to take this to the moneyer. And so what happens, this all gets melted down and it gets remade into coins. So let's say out of these 2 ingots and these 3 coins, you would have 20 coins. So out of those 20 coins, the king has 1/3 of those coins as tax. The moneyer, although I was reading the other day some GCSE history on the Saxons and Normans, and they don't call it a moneyer. And they're making a massive mistake here because they call it a coin stamper. But coin stamping is a part of the process. The correct term is a moneyer. So a moneyer, he would have 1/3 too. So let's say that's 1/3 goes to the king, that 1/3 goes to the moneyer, and whatever's left over is Egil's profit, and he's allowed to keep that. But if you're a clever man, you'll go to another blacksmith beforehand, and you'll say, right, look at that, I've got all that profit. Now, if I give you those 2 coins, I want you to get the rest of that and make it into jewellery for me. So he makes it into some Thor's hammers, or he makes it into a bracelet. So when it comes to the time when he has to go and pay his tax, he's got no coin profit, because the coin profit has evaded tax, and he's now got some nice rings where he's got a nice bracelet. And of course, if you got 1,000 coin in profit and you did that, you're going to save yourself a lot of coin, because let's face it, if you've got 1,000 coins, you don't want to be paying 333 to the king. You don't want to be paying 333 coins to the moneyer who's making the coins for you. And of course, every town and city would have a moneyer, and every town and place would have their own type of coins. So that's also quite interesting. And so you don't want to pay all those 333 coins to the king and the 333 coins to the moneyer. So you go to a blacksmith and he converts all that profit, 1,000 coins, into, let's say, 20 bracelets. And, you know, you perhaps you may say, well, I'm going to keep a few coins in profit and give the king 1 coin, and the most minimum I can give him. But the king can't touch you on the other bits of what you could convert into hat silver, because you've just evaded tax. So tax evasion is not a new thing, it's a very old thing, and it goes back to the money system. So yes, so remember that goes back in this little patch. We'll put that back in here. And another thing you may have in your patch is a Viking key. Although most of the time in the Viking times, as a man, so if Egil was married, he had a key to his war chest, and in that war chest he may have another little chest where he kept his money. He would have given that to his wife, because the wife, or your wife in Saxon, was the keeper of the keys. She would have kept the key to the war chest, and she would have kept the key to the money chest or any other chest, and she would have wore them on chains around her necklace or around her body to show the wealth what they've got. That this man here has 4 keys and 4 places to lock things up. So again, and that is a Viking key, and that's a key to my war chest. In another video, I'm going to put all my weapons in my war chest, and we're going to go through them all one by one, because that'll be a fascinating video. And it's not like a modern key. And so this goes in, it twists round, and you put it this way, and I'll demonstrate that at another point. And the blacksmith who made this would have to make this loop last, because you've got to get this little wooden handle on there, and then you would have slightly heated it up and then bent and made that loop, and that would have hung off your belt of your wife. Of course, if you don't have a wife in those times, then you would have kept your key. But a lot of the time, most of the time, the keys would have been kept by your wife, because in those days, the Vikings and the Saxons respected the women folk and gave them power. Although they were limited the amount of coins they could trade every year, if, say, you died and your wife inherited your estate, you were still quite limited to a number of profits you could make. But then again, there was ways around that. So you may have a key in your little patch as well. So that's the first thing in this patch. And we've got to, before we open it, we'll have a look at some of your comments. And I do thank you for taking the time to watch this video and to enjoying what I'm teaching you, because it's a fascinating subject. Let me just drink some tea and cheers. What are you drinking today? Let me know in the comments. I mean, I'll try to adjust the camera for you slightly so you can actually see me on the video. This is where I need to have a guy behind the camera helping me. Oh, yes. So I've just got some of your comments. So Joxy says, I can't believe they were that advanced in their thinking to save money. They call that tax avoidance today. Well, yes. But tax avoidance is quite a legal thing to do. For instance, you could set up a business on a tax haven. And if you do that, fundamentally, your business could reduce the amount of tax you're paying because it's in a tax haven and you're not fundamentally having your tax paid in the country you're born in. So, for instance, you could go to the Isle of Man or you can go to the Isle of Wight, which are both tax havens, and Jersey, of course. This is what rich people do. And, of course, there's another reason to avoid tax in inheritance. So I couldn't say it then. So let's say Egil was quite wealthy, you know, had 2 or 3 houses and had, let's say, 2 sons. So if he wanted, in the modern world, to avoid tax, you would set yourself up a trust fund. And there's 2 sorts of trust funds. There's a 7-year trust fund and a 2-year trust fund. I know this personally from experience because of my situation, which is another situation completely entirely, which I won't go into. But one day my life will be changing. That's what I'm saying. So yeah, so you know, if you got, let's say, £1 million in your bank and you don't be paying £400,000 in inheritance tax, you'll set up a trust fund. But as long as your trust fund matures, as long as the person has mental capacity to set that trust fund up, and a lot of people should be thinking about this with their houses. Let's face it. I mean, I'm 47. I know I don't look it, but I've not had a hard life. I never had a mortgage or family yet. So there you are. You got a house. And you're thinking, you know, you're getting on in life. So what you should be doing is thinking about putting your house in a trust fund. Because if you don't safeguard your savings by putting it in some kind of a fund, trust fund, or you're putting your house in a trust fund, then your local council, when you start to get ill, will say, right, you're going to spend so much money on care fees, so we're going to have your house off you when you die. And so a lot of people get disinherited simply because the fact that we've got a very greedy government. And the Tories are very, very bad, and you know, not a nice bunch of people. So, and it is a fascinating subject. So, just go back to some of your comments. I said that twice then. So, Joxy says, it's hard to shake the image of screaming berserkers when you think about Vikings. You forget they were people just like us. Well, of course, fundamentally, a Viking was a trader before he was a warrior. So, you know, when the Vikings were coming to trade, they would go in the long ships, and the dragon head would be in the boat because they only had the dragon head on when they're going raiding. It's also there to scare away the land spirits as well, which is a whole entire subject and quite fascinating. And so the Vikings were fast traders because they went all over Europe. They figured out to navigate the river systems and got way into, you know, even to Baghdad. You know, you'll find Viking remains in Baghdad in Iraq. And quite relevant at the moment with what's happening with Israel and Iran. Let's not go down that rabbit hole. But it's just very, very bad for the world. And if it carries on, fuel is going to go up like that. And you'll be paying twice or you know, a lot more money for your petrol, which is a scary situation to be in. But I think fundamentally, you know, we're not a political channel, but I feel sorry for anybody who lives in the Middle East at the moment, because it's such a terrible situation, and we should always think of the people, and we should always think about peace in the world. Because yeah, Vikings were great warriors, but they was also quite happy at making peace, because you know, if they had peace with the Saxons, they would have had more success and would have got more land. But of course, the Saxons were a little bit treacherous, and of course, when they kicked about and killed a lot of the Vikings in the early 10th century or 11th century, that was a bad thing. But yes, so let's go more your comments. So Martin says, pay was normally around 15 to 20 coins per month. So yes, so you could have yourself 200 or 300 coins, and that's quite a bit of coinage. So, and that's, and said a coin was about £20, so £300 to £400 a month. A cow was £600. Well, yes, I mean that's very expensive for a cow, but there's a lot of money in those days when there's lots of silver about. And of course, the Vikings were very clever at knowing, and the Saxons, how to make money. Because let's face it, if they didn't make money, we wouldn't have all the wonderful things they had and left behind for us, like the Sutton Hoo burials. But of course, you also took your wealth with you, so hence why the Sutton Hoo burial is so rich. But it's quite interesting to see that time team this year in the summertime were actually being given permission to go and dig up and do some archaeological diggings on one of the mounds at Sutton Hoo. This is one of the first times that's happened for years. In fact, our late and former host Egil Thorsson was an archaeologist and actually dug at Sutton Hoo, because he talks about when you're digging at Sutton Hoo, you've got to be very careful because it was used by the army. There's lots of unexploded bombs all over the place. And this is the last thing you want to do is you're troweling away. You don't need to put in your trowel through a unexploded mortar shell. And you're saying that happened all the time. So you have to be very careful at Sutton Hoo as well. But in the day's war, we've got metal detectors, and no doubt they'll check that beforehand, because what we don't want to see on Time Team is Tony Robinson being blown up. I think some people like that, but but where would we be without the lights of Time Team teaching us archaeological history in the 1990s? And it's such a joy to see it back on TV, and I am such a fan of Time Team. So yes. And if you're on the channel, we do have a Discord, because I did advertise this earlier on the Discord that I was going to do a live stream tonight, and I like to keep to my promises. So this is why I'm on camera now, and it's really exciting, and I do love doing these little live streams. And at some point, I think I'm going to start doing a live stream. I'm going to read you a saga, not in one live stream though, because that will probably knock my voice up. So over probably 10 live streams, I might just do you Egil's saga. I think I'm going to do a poll and let you guys choose what I read you. And then I'm going to somehow think about the copyright situation with reading the book. Because I don't know if you'll see, but if you just pan this way, you'll see some of my books on the Viking period. That's just some of them. I've got a lot more upstairs. I think I own somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 books, I must say. And I do love reading. It's one of those ways I just unwind. When I'm not listening to music, I'll sit in my library and I'll pick a book up or a book I'm reading, and I'll just lose myself with time. So let's go back to some of your comments. No. So, yes, bear with me. So we do like to read the comments, and not enough YouTubers do this, because when you do the live stream and you've got people watching, I think it's courteous to read the comments. And sometimes we've purposely done live streams just to read your comments, and because we've got such a wonderful audience and fans of the channel, I learn from the comments as well, not to you guys. So so the Viking Martin Brown says, I'm 56. Well, you don't look it, Martin. And then Rosie in the Posies, where exactly is this transmitting from? Oh, right. So I am from England, or Englander. I'm English. That's the old way of saying English, England. And I come from a city called Derby. And if you think about England, Derby is smack bang in the middle of England. And it's very close to a city called Nottingham, which is famous for Robin Hood. And where I come from, Derby is famous for being the most haunted city in the whole of the UK. And I am in the process of developing a series of me going around Derby and filming the locations. I'm actually going to talk to you and tell you the stories about these famous ghost stories of Derby, because I think that's going to be fascinating. And of course, one of the most famous Derby residents is a guy called Richard Felix from Most Haunted. If you know Most Haunted, then you probably wouldn't know of Richard Felix. And he's got some wonderful content about ghosts. And he's a wonderful, wonderful man. It doesn't pay you much today. He's a bit mean. But he's got so much knowledge. And Richard has the Derby Jail Museum. And so another place I will go to and film at in the future and do a tour of that. And Derby's also famous for being the home of Rolls-Royce, because that's fundamentally where Rolls-Royce started. Allegedly, and this is allegedly, Derby, a man from Derby invented the hot dog. Although there's quite a few people in America say that they invented the hot dog. So I don't know whether that's true or not. And we do have a famous football team called the Rams, because Derby and Derbyshire is very famous for goats and sheep farming. We have a very famous guy on the channel called Neil Sigmundson, who's in the Viking times was a sheep farmer. That's a personal in-joke between me and the other hosts. So yeah, that's where I come from, Derby. It's, of course, it's spelled D-E-R-B-Y, and back in the times when the Vikings were here, they called it Dialaby, and it kind of means like a deer enclosure settlement. But before that, before the Vikings, and this is where we get the name from the channel, the Saxons who lived here called it Northworthy. Now, worthy is the Saxon word for a kind of a meeting place. And so it would have been like or a marketplace. So it would have been like Tamworth, and Tamworth translates as Tam's marketplace. So Tam is a name, whereas Northworthy just kind of associates with where we are, is further up north from the south, but we're not quite as far as up north as Yorkshire or Lancashire or places like Northumbria, which is a lovely place and got a lot of Viking history. So that's where I come from. And at some point I will do you a tour of Derby and show you some of the most interesting sites. We also have a very famous artist from Derby called Joseph Wright, who painted some most wonderful pictures. And again, I very recently went around the Derby Museum and I filmed all of Joseph Wright pictures we have in the gallery, and I'm going to make some content on that for you to kind of show off, some of the wonderful things about Derby. So yes, that's where I come from, and I love where I come from. And there's an old saying in Derby: Derby born and bred, strong in the arm and thick in the head. It could be true about some Derby folk. And if you ever come to Derby, we're very friendly people. Now, often when I go have a pint, you'll meet Southerners, from down south, Wessex, and they'll be sitting around the table, and you get talking to them and say, "We can't believe how friendly people are in the Midlands," and we are very friendly, which is probably partly where I get my character from. So yes, I'm very proud of where I come from. And I'm well travelled, and I've reenacted history for 30 years now. In fact, it's 32 years. I started reenacting the American Civil War. So there's also a lot of American Civil War kit in here, like greatcoats and uniforms, because I did that. And a lot of people will say, well, what has the American Civil War got to do with England? Well, when General Lee signed his peace treaty at Appomattox in 1865, you go outside and the building had a veranda, and outside the veranda was a Union man on guard, and he was from my town of Derby. So that shows you how local to me that war was. And we know from Derby itself, around about 30 men fought in that war. In fact, you do say that if you visit enough churchyards in England and Scotland and Ireland and Wales, you would actually find gravestones from American Civil War veterans that came back and died, and they would have their regiment on it because they would have been so proud of what they served, whether it was for the South or for the North, and it's terrible to see what's happening in America with, you're taking down the statues because it's a Southern general. But if you take down statues, if you take down history, how are we meant to learn about history, and how are we meant to better ourselves and learn the lesson? Because we can't hide history, because history has its very bad points and bad people, and we can't just push them to one side because we'll forget. And we'll do it all over again, because that we do as human nature, to go and fight and war. So, yes. So we'll just go back to some of your comments. So the Viking Martin Brown says, I'm in Northern Ireland. He's in Derby. Yes. I very much like to visit Northern Ireland again, and Southern Ireland. In fact, it's one of my places where I thought about relocating to if we ever move from Derby. Is maybe Southern Ireland, because I'm a folk singer, and so whenever I go to Ireland, people love me because I love to sing songs, and you always end up being brought loads of Guinness and whiskies, and you get drunk for free. So it's marvellous. So that's one of the places I may relocate to. I do relocate. I don't know yet. I'm thinking about it. So let's just go back. So yeah, we do have a famous football team in Derby, but they're rubbish, the Rams. And I used to be a massive Derby County supporter, but I don't really follow now because it's just disappointment. And so I don't want that negativity in my life. So I've stopped listening to the matches, and I hope they do well because they are a good football team, got a lot of history. We won the FA Cup in 1946, and I can tell you a very funny story about that because in 1946, my late father Cyril was 15 years old, and his cousin had 2 tickets for the FA Cup down at Wembley, and so he wanted to go, but his mother would not let him go. He said, "You're too young at 15 to go on your own to a big football match." But he gave some money to his cousin and said, "Well, can you get me a programme?" So he got himself a programme from the FA Cup in 1946 when Derby County won. And the very next day, when all the Derby County players came back to the baseball ground, which used to be our old football club, and we call it the baseball ground because in the World War II, when the Americans were in Derby, they converted it into a baseball ground for baseball, which is where it gets its name from. So there's my dad. He was much shorter than me. Looks quite Norman. So he was hanging about waiting for the football team to come back. So, to get all the signatures. So this is what he did. He got all the signatures. And the last person he needed to see was a guy called Jackie Stamp. Or Jackie Stamps, who was a very famous footballer. And he looked at him and said, hey up, kid, aren't you a bit old at 15 to be going collecting football signatures? And then he left that football programme in his attic of an old house in Normanton. And it's probably still there somewhere and would be worth a fortune now. So that's the sideline. And we are going to get into this patch very shortly. I'm going to read some more comments and then drink some more tea because I'm English and we drink a lot of tea in England. And coffee in the morning. So, yes, let's have a look. Bear with me. So Rosie in the posy says, "Hello, Iric OJ." So very nice to see you, Iric, on the channel again. And thank you for joining our Discord. And then Joxy says, "Talking tax and history, did you know that the Doomsday Book has been mapped online? You can look on a map of the whole of England and see what tax records were made about you in your own town. Check it out." No, I did not know that about the Doomsday Book. But it's not the most easiest book to access and read because it's basically a lot of lists. But no, that's quite fascinating and that would be quite useful for studying and coming up with side information about some of the folk tales. We could include some of the tax information because we do like telling good stories. So no, thank you for that, Joxy. And then Rosie in the posy says lots of books. Well, that's just a fraction of what books I have. And I've got some lovely books upstairs. Maybe over time I might read a few of them to you because I've got some wonderful books. I read one very recently called The Secret Art of Tramping by a guy called Stephen Graham. Not the actor Stephen Graham. A guy who was a journalist in the 1920s and 30s and pretty much walked everywhere all over the world, Russia, Africa, China. But he made this wonderful book. And you can get audio copies of the book online for free. He goes about footwear, and he talks about your tent, and he talks about what kind of stuff you should carry and how you carry money. And I kind of think to myself, well, that kind of relates to a certain degree to the Vikings because they walked a lot and the Saxons did. So what would the Saxons carry? How would they see it in their point of view? So, and I find that fascinating, and I may actually read that book to you online as well. So, and then the Viking Martin Brown says, "You should be getting your bath and getting sorted for work tomorrow." He laughs out loud. Well, I probably should be, but I've got more videos to edit yet. And I've just seen the latest Dave the Cat video from Iric, and it had me in stitches, it did. So I'm looking forward to editing that. So I just want to say thank you to Iric for the wonderful content he does and the support he gives me on this channel. Because, YouTube is a wonderful thing, but some days it's a bit like this. You get downs when you feel very down about it because you're not getting the views you think you should be, and it's very disheartening. But then, you know, you start putting out some content, you get some wonderful views. Like at the moment, we've had, what, 100,000 views in 4 weeks, which is very good for us. And then you get another high again. But it can be very disheartening. But you need that break now and again to recharge the batteries. And it's very important. And of course, that doesn't damage your channel to have a break, because YouTube are very well aware that it can be, you know, quite draining. And you can certainly, and I've had it before, create a burnout where I'll just burnt myself out because I've done too much. So, yes. So the Viking Martin Brown says, I have about 2,000 books as well. That would be nice to learn more about your area, says Rosie and the Posies. Well, yes, I think local history is fascinating. And then the Viking Martin Brown, a famous football team. I laughed out loud. I'm saying nothing. Well, I'm agreeing with you. And then Eric OJ says, I thought Northworthy would just mean being worthy of the North. Well, no, Northworthy was, and Derby is very unique in this sense, because we're the only city and town with a complete change of name. If you take the instance of York or some of the other towns like Londonwick, they've all got a bit of Celtic, they've all got a little bit of Roman, and they've all got a mixture in the names. But when the Vikings came, they totally rebranded it. Although in the Roman times, Derby was called Deventio. So there's probably a little element of the der, or maybe it's just a coincidence. But of course, deer means deer. And of course, Derby was a wooded valley, with, you know, some fields in the middle that would have been cultivated over from the Iron Age. And so there's lots of deer all around where I live. Where I live now would have been a wooded area. And so they completely rebranded it to Dearaby. So it's D-E-R-A-B-Y, or sometimes it could be D-E-O-R-A-B-I-I is another way of spelling it. And so it's unique in that sense. We're the only town and city with a complete change of name. There's a few villages with the same instance, but when it comes to a city and a town, Derby is very unique like that. It's a pity we've got very poor councillors who don't invest enough money in our heritage. And a lot of our nice medieval buildings all got knocked down in the 1960s, like St. Ortman's Church, where, you know, they've got you know, sarcophagus of St. Ortman, who was a prince, of course, back in the day. And again, I will go around Derby Museum and show you some of these wonderful artifacts that we've still got. But of course, if Derby was left as it was, it would have been very much like York, with all the little tiny streets. But Derby just got ruined because of greed and the councillors back in the day. So, and then, could go back. Yeah, so, and the reason why we called it Northworthy, that was a kind of a suggestion from Turkey, and I said, well, let's call it Northworthy Sagas and Stories, because we wanted to cover the sagas and we wanted to cover stories. And of course, Egil joined, and we started doing other things like our vlog series, and we watched trailers and reviewed them, and we unboxed things, and we did a bit of combat. So it was just paying respect to our ancestors. And I think there's a lesson to be learnt that we should respect our ancestors, and we should respect those that came before us, because that is how we learn. So it's my 9 o'clock alarm going off. It is 9 o'clock. Oh yeah, no, it's 10 o'clock. And then Opperton says, I'm a Leeds fan. And so I thought, a minute, you're from Leeds. Oh yes, well, Leeds and Derby County have always had a bit of a rivalry, and I think enough said is there. But you know, it just makes you think of oh God, the football manager, Brian Clough. So back in the day when I was about 15, I was in the Venture Scouts, and one of my friends in the Venture Scout used to be Brian Clough's paper boy, because Brian Clough lived about 2 minutes from this house, or maybe 5 minutes. And so one winter time, on Christmas time, he was going up to deliver Brian Clough's paper, and he says, have you got a tip, Brian, for me? He said, how about you run fast and bugger off? That was Brian Clough for you. And he was a character, was Brian Clough, and he should have really have been an England manager, because he would have been one of the best England managers we had, but they just never gave it to him. And of course, he drank so much that what killed him. So lesson there to be learnt as well. So we've got Sam Stapleton on here. So He says, everyone should show pride in where they come from. That's very true, Sam. We should. We should all have a lot of pride in where we come from. And, that's an important thing, that is, showing pride and respecting your past. And then the Viking Martin Brown, my big cousin David Brown, is a huge Leeds fan. Everyone knows him at Leeds, laughs out loud. I can imagine that. And it's a wonderful thing, football, but I often say that football is like the modern equivalent of warfare, because a lot of men don't go to battle anymore, don't join the army. Not like 1,000 years ago when you had to go and fight. You got no choice if you was a fit man. So, I've always said it's like the modern equivalent of going to war. But of course, real football these days, I think, is women's football, because that's real football. And the lower leagues, that's real football, because the Premiership and the Championship are just being ruined by money. I mean, it's ridiculous that a player's being sold for $100 million, whatever, pounds. I mean, how's that work out? And where does it go to? Are we going to get to the point in 20 years when the player's going to be like £1 billion to buy a player? I mean, you could probably buy Derby County for $100 million. Please do. So, Off10 says, laughs out loud, and I hope you're enjoying the content today. It's all because I've got a new phone. I can make better content for you. And we do like our meme videos as well, because one of the things we like about this channel is that we've got a sense of humour, and humour is very important. It's such an old thing. It goes way back to the Stone Age and beyond, to Neolithic man, hugging and humour, handshaking and keeping your word and not lying. Those are very old things in time and go way back, I think, anyway. So Sam Stapleton, those who do not learn from the past are doomed to repeat itself. Well, if you don't learn from the past, you're going to get stuck in the past if you're not careful. So don't live in the past. Always think about the future. So Opperton says, I'm so excited. I have signed up to sail from Borey to Whitby, North Yorkshire this summer. 4 Viking ships. One of the largest is the Draken in the group. Well, I'm very jealous there. I'm going to definitely have to come along to Norway. In fact, Norway is one of the other places I might actually move to as a possibility, because I do like the idea of living somewhere else. So yes, I'm very jealous that you've been invited on a longship voyage. And are you doing it in kit? I suppose you're not allowed to, are you? I suppose you've got to wear modern clothing or high-vis, sea jackets in case you fall in the sea. So it says, will you visit me in Whitby, Braggy? Well, let me know when, if I can fit it in and think about it. Yeah, I might just do that, because that sounds like a plan. And I've been to Whitby before. The last time I went to Whitby was on the day Michael Jackson died, because I went with 3 big yardies, and a yardie is like a Jamaican gangster type person. So I was in the back of a car with these 3 very tough Jamaican lads who I used to work with, and we wanted to go sea fishing. So it was on the very day Michael Jackson died, and it was very rough. The waves were 3 or 4 foot high, and it was just about safe to go out. And everyone apart from me and the captain was seasick, and I brought some beer with me. So there's me and the captain of this boat drinking beer, and then everybody else was being sick over the side. So I definitely got Viking sea legs, because I loved it. Although the fishing wasn't brilliant, and I probably did more drinking than I did fishing. So I can always remember where I was on the very day that Michael Jackson died, and let's face it, he's a controversial subject alone. So the Viking Martin Brown, I have 54 followers. Well, at some point, Martin, if I remember, I'll share some of your videos on the community post, and let's see if we can't get you to 100 followers. And then, yes, we are going to do this bag in a minute. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by all your lovely comments. But let me catch up with the comments, and then we're going to crack open and discover what Egil has hidden in this little pouch. So, and then Sam Stapleton says, oh man, the Lady Gaga video was hilarious. Yeah, I made the video, And then I kind of like had a bit of B-roll Eggle dancing, and I kind of like saw him like thrusting behind Lady Gaga. So I kind of thought, oh look, Eggle's banging Lady Gaga. But I like Lady Gaga. I mean, there's that movie she's in with the guy with the beard, where she's a singer, and I can't get past 20 minutes of it. 20 minutes, that's it. That's enough for me. It's not that I don't like it. I like it a lot. I just can't seem to get past that 20 minutes. And it'll come back to me later on what the film is called, because I want to go and watch the first 20 minutes again when it's on the BBC. So yes, so often Nordfjord sounds Norwegian. Oh right, it sure does. And Belfast means the mouth of the Thorsson, says Martin. And Offerton says Martin Brown, interesting. And the Viking Martin Brown says an old Irish river. And Offerton says, ah. And then Joxy says, and when you guys have been around long enough on the channel and I'd get to know you, I would award you the Blue Spanner. Because you see, you've got quite a few Blue Spanners, and those guys have just been around a long time. And of course, at some point, we're going to go viral. I'm dead certain on this. We are going to go viral. We keep going around the house now going, we're going to go viral. We will go viral. We're going to go viral. Because I'm trying to manifest it and create that positivity. And I write it down. We're going to go viral because I'm just trying to do everything with my raw power magic, because I am a witch and a shaman, so I do know a lot about magic. I'm trying to will it on. I mean, at some point, with the amount of content I'm putting out, it's got to happen. But just be patient is what I got to keep reminding myself. And then Joxy says, and then we're going to open this pouch up. Well, I've had a blast tonight watching the stream. I've got to get ready for bed myself. Keep it up, man. 5k subscribers is great achievement. The first 100k subs is the hardest. All creators say it. Well, I've always thought that the first 1,000 subscribers are the hardest, but it's great. I know at the moment our 5-year prediction is 52,000 subscribers and 28 million views. But in order to do that, I've got to keep posting every day for 5 years. Of course, the more I do that, the higher the figure is gone. And I know the highest we've had prediction wise is 187,000 subs and 237 million views in 5 years. Because let's face it, we've got a lot of content, and sooner or later it's going to blow up. And then Martin says, I've been full of Viking gear on a boat a few times. And Sam Staple says, what year is Charlotte? I would love to discuss some more of the old magic, especially the magic of runes. Well, I work with a woman called Charlotte. No, she's not watching me. So now I'm going to enter this pouch, which is a nice woman, actually. It's Charlotte, who I work with. She's like my team leader. They was going to try to make me the team leader, but I didn't really think it was worth the hassle of the amount of money they was going to pay me. And I can't really tell you what I do at the moment, but I have filmed some videos of where I work. And when I leave that place, I'm going to release those videos, and you guys are going to have a blast about what I've been doing. So in this patch, we've got another patch which is very knackered. Look at that. And it's all come apart from the side. It's probably 30 years old, and Egle's had it for many years. Is there anything else in here? No, there's nothing in there. So let's have a look. We'll put it out one at a time. So we've got another ingot. So more wolf. Oh look, it's got another ingot. So 3 ingots in here. Oh, he's got more than me, does Egle. Oh, he's got a dice here. Now this dice is made out of clay. So that's quite interesting. And you can see it's quite rough. But again, gambling and betting was quite something done by the Vikings. And no doubt they would have had little games to play. So he's got another bit of stone. And I don't think that's flint because it's very, very light. So that's probably charcoal. And then, he's got some more coins. So again, Egil showing his little wolf off by saying, look, I've got more coins in my pouch. There's another coin. And then here, look, in fascinating item, he's got a bone needle. I did not know he had a bone needle, because I've not been in these pouches, because I was too respectful. So he's got another coin. This is another one by Grundle, or Dave the Moneyer. He's a very famous coin maker in the UK. And here he's got a rectangular dice made of bone. So another dice for gambling and betting. No doubt they would have had little games. And again, he's got another bit of flint. So there's a lot in here. Another coin. Oh, more wolf. another coin, a much bigger coin. I did not know Egil was this wealthy as a Viking. And then he's got another clay dice. So he's got 2 dice for playing games. So look at that, 2 pairs of 5s came out then. And you can tell how old that pouch is by all the stains and the fact it's very worn. And we're going to leave that pouch as it is and put it back together. So that's what he's got. So interesting, the bone needle is quite fascinating. You do get metal needles, but bone needles were more common in the time. And of course, a lot of these things don't survive. And so this demonstrates again how they would recycle things. And so this may be, a sheep bone, or it could be a bone from a rabbit, or it could be a bone from a hare. There is some controversy about whether they had rabbits and hares, but very recently, a couple of years ago, in a Roman dig, they found hare remains, and they also found rabbit remains. So they now say that they did have rabbits and hares in the UK because the Romans brought them over because they like to eat them. So again, this demonstrates the fact that, when they got the animal, maybe a cow, they would split the bones and make little needles out of them. Because these needles would break, because you could eye the needles, quite fragile. And of course, you only got to sit on it or snap it, and you've got your broken needle. That goes in your rubbish pit. And then one day, Tony Robinson comes along and digs it up. And of course, the dice, again, is to do with gaming, because they like to enjoy themselves in the evening. But let's face it, Vikings and Saxons did not have Netflix, didn't have a radio. So you had storytelling, and you had people playing the lyre, which I could demonstrate, but it's upstairs at the moment. My lyre, which I very recently brought. And so those sort of things were very important. And of course, a dice also demonstrates that they had the ability to count numbers, because you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 marked on that dice. And of course, a number system is a very old thing, because you need to have the ability to count your sheep. You need to have the ability to count how many cattle you got and how many coins you got in your pouch. And of course, the weight of the coin and the size of the coin would also dictate the wealth of the coin. Let's have a look at this coin. Because I'm not a coin expert, so at some point I could probably find out what these coins are. This is a different figure, so you've got a king's head on that. So that's probably either Saxon or Viking. Most probably Viking, but then again, coins were reused and coins were remelted. Because the reason why modern coins have lines down the side is to stop the coins from being clipped. That's why we have lines and grooves down the side of coins, so somebody can't go along and slip a bit of your coin off. And of course, one of the most famous person when it comes to coins, I think, is Henry VIII. Is it Henry VIII, whose old copper nose? Because it was quite cheap in his coinage. And so with his silver coins, they put a lot of copper in the coins. And so what would happen when the coins were in your pocket, your coin would rub on the nose of the king, and I think it's Henry VIII, the nose would go to a copper colour, which is where he gets his nickname, Old Copper Nose. I could be wrong there. It could be another king, because I got often too much going around in my brain, and I got ADHD, and that really help. So that is what, and that's a lot. You think about all that in a little patch, inside a bigger patch. It shows you also that they was quite happy to, show things. Now, whilst you're here, Sam, we're going to go back to this first patch. Where are we? Give me a minute. This one here. Let's just put this one aside, and we're going to put the stuff over to one side, because I know you was on about the other day, you was talking and debating about tinder boxes. I'm going to demonstrate and show you what Egle has, and some of it is what I've here, because it's got a thing there, which again could be used for lighting your fire. But then again, also these things were like a lucky item in your bag, because let's face it, how many times have you been out somewhere and you saw a stone, you think, oh, I'm going to have that, and you pick the stone up and you put it in your pocket, like this, and then you put it on your shelf at home. I've done that so many times. So we're going to go back just purposely for Sam on this little patch, because I'm going to show him Egil's fire starter kit. So in this patch, it's 5 inches by 4 inches. If you want to know, Egil has these items. It's got some varieties for lighting, and then it's got 2 more bits, and then if you dig down at the bottom, it's got some wool. And so what you would do, you'd have this at the bottom, and the idea is actually with these loops, you actually put your tinder at the bottom, and you kind of have it looping underneath. And then, if I'm correct in saying, you strike this way rather than what I did earlier and did it this way, because I'm not used to lighting a fire one of these. And so if it was dark, you'll probably see the fact that it's sparking, but you saw there spark. So of course it would be nice if you had a bigger stone. Let's try this one. And of course with this stone, it's so worn, it's so smooth because it's been used so much over the years. In fact, it's really smooth there compared to this one. And this one, if you look at the difference, that's rough, that's never been used. This one's been overused. So again, you'll get your little, this is your steel, that will be, this is your flint, or flint and steel, but in this case we're using a bit of iron parietes, and you'll go along like this. And the idea, without making a fire on my table, you get a little bit of a spark in here, you again cup it in your hand, you start blowing it, and then you've got a little pile of sticks, hopefully prepared, if you're well prepared, and you transfer that over and start blowing. And then that is how you start a fire in the Viking times, because they didn't have lighters and they didn't have matches. And I hope, Sam, you can see that. In fact, I'll just turn the camera down for you and have a closer look. So, and that's what's in Egil's fire starter kit. And I know he's had this kit for probably 20, 30 years, because Egil started reenacting in the early 1980s. And most of this kit Egil has, you know, from his old knife to his bolt. Although his bolt is much older, because his leather belt here is a bolt from World War One and used to be his granddad's. So, and he wore that out of respect to his granddad, who fought at the Battle of the Somme, like my granddad did. My granddad was in the Sherwood Foresters, and he was a sniper. And my great granddad got shot in the head by another sniper. He was trying to snipe the sniper out, and the other sniper got him first and hit him in the head, but he survived that. And then he had to go and have some surgery, so he had a massive dint in his head, because they would have put a silver plate on his head, and of course some of his brains and head wasn't there, and of course it healed up. And then my dad used to talk about, when he used to know his granddad, that when my granddad drank beer, it made him loopy because of the damage in his brain from the Battle of the Somme. So a little sideline story, and a true story, and what a horrible and terrible war that was. And again, with World War One, we can often relate it, and we did this in the American Civil War Society. We had pictures of you know, the siege of Richmond in 64, 65, when they dug all trenches. And so you can have a board of pictures of American Civil War trenches next to trenches from World War One, and you cannot tell the difference between the two. So it shows you how modern that war was. Although the first real modern war was really the Crimean War, because that really wasn't the first modern war. It happened a few years just before the American Civil War. It was another period of history I'm an expert on. So this is his little fire starter set. And of course, as a Viking and a Saxon, it's very important you have the ability to light fire. I mean, yeah, you got the old method of rubbing sticks together with a bow, but that's more of another way of doing it. But you can't exactly carry that with you, and you've got to go and hunt for those bits of wood if you're going to use that method. So that's a backup method, but generally they will try to carry in their pouch. And this is a good example of a fire starter kit for the Vikings and Saxons. And again, this will go and be quite relevant to the Iron Age and the pre-Viking culture of the Vendals again, because these things haven't really changed over time. In fact, cultures still use these to light fires in the world today, which is really amazing. So yeah, I hope you can see that, and it kind of gives you an idea of what you should have in your fire starter kit. And it's great how it's in a little pouch. So let's put that back, and then we're going to gradually put the bolt system back together, because this is what today's video is about. It's about Viking bolts and the bolt way, because they are such an essential way for carrying, you know, your lansaxes, or carrying your sword, because you've got to have some method of carrying your equipment. And personally, I like to have two bolts on rather than one, because to spread the weight. This is quite a useful thing to have. So let's put this back in there. We want to put everything back in the same place. And what you can do, you can tie these off like this if you really wanted to keep them secure. But in this case, that hangs off this bolt. We're going to put all this back in here. So again, we've got a little flint. This has got a nice shape to it. but not being used because it would be worn. We'll put the 3 ingots made of pewter, not silver, unfortunately. The 2 clay dice, and again, these little clay dice would be quite easy to make yourself. If you've got a little bit of clay, you just, you make a little square, you put your holes in and just let them dry, and then you can end up with some nice authentic Viking clay dice. And these are sort of things that are often found remaining. Of course, the bone one here would probably rot away, but maybe the clay one would survive. So we have that in there. We'll put this little bone needle in there very carefully, because we want to keep care of that. Then we put these little coins in there, and at some point I will try to identify these coins and do a video on all the coins I have and the coins Egil has. So, and then we'll put this back in here. Now what I've done, I folded it over because it's a good idea to have it folded over and facing down. And again, you can see how old this pouch is with the fact that it's not rectangular because of the weight it's been carrying. It's squashed it in. And again, some of this thread is a little bit bare. Egil made these himself. He was a good little leather worker. So again, I'm going to just fold it over and put it in the fold facing down. That will just guarantee that nothing falls out of that pouch, because we want to keep this. I know somebody was asking me the other day, well, what am I going to do with all this stuff when I die? That could be next year, it could be next week, it could be 50 years from now. It's my intention to leave all this to something like the Victorian Old Museum as a modern example of a Viking from the 21st century and his kit. And of course, I've also got the legacy of having all those videos I've made. So I'll probably do the same thing, because you've got to think about who inherits your channel. Because we don't want the channel to be deleted, because as a Viking, legacy is very, very important to Vikings. And so that was another reason why I started the channel, was to have a legacy to the world. So that one goes in there like this. And again, what you can do, you can just wrap your cord round, and you could fasten it up. But in Egil's case, you always just have it hung like this, and it wasn't fastened up. Let's just brew my cup of tea. We're going to we've got his little knife and bolt. Again, it's got some nice carving on the sheath itself. And again, I'll talk about this again. This is a sheath and not a scabbard, because a sheath is flexible, even though this is not so flexible because of the fact that it's nice solid leather. But a scabbard, you could never bend a scabbard, because a scabbard would always have a wooden backing to it. I don't really have one at hand. So that's his knife. Then at some point I'm going to replace his knife, because the knife that Egil had, it's a sharp knife. When Egil passed away, he got cremated, and then he wanted his remains to be buried in the Peak District, which is the national park in Derbyshire, and we wanted to bury him with a knife to take with him as a grave good. So his knife has gone to the grave with him. But I have a exact copy of his knife, so at some point I'm going to make a scabbard just like Egil's, and then we can have a recreation of Egil's knife on his belt for that memory, because I think that would be very nice. So again, that's the right way. We're going to put this big one on first. So just lock it on like this. We're going to put the knife on. You've got to make sure you put the knife on the right way, because if you put it on the wrong way, it's going to be sticking in like this, and you want it sticking out. So again, we're going to make sure that that's like this. Make sure it's the right way in. So of course, I've not done it the right way, so I have to do it all over again. So yeah, I'm not perfect. Let's just try to back up so you can see this. Hang on. Again, I need a guy called Bob, the cameraman, to start working with me, to start operating the camera system. Everybody should have somebody called Bob behind the camera. So we're going to put this on. So it's got to go this way. And I was also talking about the fact I'm recreating some of these as well. I'm casting some of these. So I will send some out to some of the people who really love on the channel as a little momentum. Because it won't cost much for me to cast them, and it won't cost me much to send them to a few places across the world. But I think that would be quite nice, because I do know people loved Egil, and he was such a lovely character. And then we're going to put this one on next. So this one will go on here. Of course, the one thing we are missing is Egil's little loop with an iron ring for his axe. This is somewhere
in this room, but I've got to find it. And then that's fundamentally its bolt system, and I'll just demonstrate putting it on again. Because what you want is your seax or sax to the Vikings to be pointing towards your right arm, because there's no real such thing in those times as left or right-handed people. Most people couldn't write, so like today. And so this is your shield. This will always be your left arm, and your left hand will always be your shield arm, and your right hand, your dominant hand and arm, would always be the one you use your weapon with. And so I'll demonstrate this. One thing I'll demonstrate again is how you fasten a bolt up. So again, you want to make sure it's nice and tight. Your bolt will always be tight, but not too tight. You don't want to suffocate yourself. So you put it in, but you also do this. You put it, you should. So this is what you call a mounting, or what we call a strap end. And it's there A for decoration, but also to add a bit of weight to your bolt. So you shove that at behind the back of your bolt. So I'm wearing modern clothing. Normally I'll try to wear Viking clothing, but I never got round to that today. And the thing is, I can't appear in my Viking clothes all the time, because we also want to get across the fact that, you know, we are modern people in the modern world. So what you do, you kind of tighten it up. By doing that, it'll never come undone, and it's always safe. And that's one of the reasons why you have this mounting, so that it carries weight and it won't come undone. And of course, if it's made of silver or gold, and you got one even with enamel, it's kind of saying, "Oh yeah, you've got a lot of coin." And again, we'll just drag this round and we'll show you. So the reason why you have this on the right hand side, because if you're right-handed, this is your arm for fighting with. If you're trying to put a seax from that side, it's very difficult. It's a bit like having a sword on your back. You virtually, cannot do it, because you got your sheath and your scabbard. You don't have the reach to pull your sword out. Although this is a broken sword, you could with this one. But with a normal sword, and I've done this on camera, you can't pull the sword out. You're like, trying to get it out, and by the time you've done that, Barry the Anglo-Normans stabbed you in the stomach 10 times. So the reason why I have it, so you can put it out quickly. If you had it the opposite way around, it would be very difficult to get it out, and you'll find difficult. Now some of them, like this one, can hang down as well as another method. But generally, you have a shorter knife you eat with. That's for eating your dinner, and that's for killing the enemies with. So that's Egil's bolt system, and I think it's a wonderful bit of kit. And I must say, I've got quite a few bolts when it comes to the Viking period, and I must say, this is the best bolt system I've ever worn as a Viking. It's so comfy. And the reason why, the secret to it, is because it's wide, so we can learn from it. And I think this is a throwback to the Romano-British and the Romans, who like wide bolts. I mean, they had bolts which were 4 inches wide and had all these lovely mountings on. That kind of faded out, as the centuries came along. But we could all learn something here from this bolt. Have a wide bolt; it will feel so comfortable when you wear it. So that's his little bolt system. And we're going to go back and look at your comments, because I love reading your comments. So got a few to read, so bear with me. So Martin said, I've been in full Viking gear. I've had that on a Viking boat a few times. Well, I'm very jealous. I've already done it a couple of times. And then Sam says, I meant to put shaman. Damn. Autocorrect. Oh no, don't you hate autocorrect? Yeah, I'm a shaman by faith. It's something I've been into for 30 years. And of course, we don't have a lot of knowledge when it comes to Norse Viking shamanism, because the church would have burnt a lot of that information. A lot of that information would have been passed down from one generation to another generation. So Sam Stapleton says, dice would be perfect for D&D, and definitely look for my dear friend. Oh yes. And we've got a comment here from Triple Guns in it, Fran. And very warm welcome to you. I've not seen you on the channel before, so please subscribe. And then Martin says, I made a sewing kit and a wooden bone and brass needles. Oh, with wood, bone and brass needles. Oh, that's very cool. I definitely need some more authentic needles. And then Martin says, have to one up at 6. So good night. So good night, Martin. So we've got Sam says, thank you for showing me that will help in out. It's almost like the one I've put. I never used that technique of putting the tinder in the loops, and I love the history of your family. Well, thank you very much. And then we've got a comment here from Paulina Saika, and it says de Norsk. No, I'm English. So yeah, and of course where I come from in England is very well known for Vikings. Of course we had an Anglo-Saxon culture, but the Vikings came and took over my town and city. And of course Derby was one of the 5 boroughs, and of course it was also part of the Danelaw. And at one point the capital of Mercia was in Repton, so we're also a part of Mercia, and I'm also a very proud Mercian. So I often say I'm Mercian first and I'm English second. So and then Paulina Saika saying, is he Norwegian? No, I'm English. So but I'd love to go to Norway again. So Sam says, no better way to honour the fallen Viking than to bury him with his favourite weapon or armour. Well, yes, and that's what we did. I didn't personally get invited to it. I think it was a very, very small event. It was just a couple of people, from my understanding. But, you know, this is why we're honouring Egle on the channel. Every 9th of the month, for now on and forever, as long as I got videos, is Egil Thorsson Day. And I think I've probably got a good decade's worth of new videos from Egle, which I've never published or edited, to keep us going and to remember Egle, because legacy to a Viking is very important. And I know on quite a few occasions, me and Egle talked about this sort of thing if he passed away, and he said, well, please continue the channel and please continue my name, because that's so important to me. And I said I would look down from Valhalla, as the Vikings would call it. Valhalla is a modern term. In the Viking times, they would call it Valhall. So Valhalla is a much more modern term. So you'll be in Valhalla, and you'll be looking down and wishes as well. And let's hope they got YouTube up there, because he'll be laughing a lot. So yes. So, and then Sam says, would Vikings have a letter canteen? Well, you mean a leather canteen? Yes, they did have leather kind of. I got one somewhere. It's in the garage. This is over that way. I've got to make a stop for it. But yeah, they would get leather, and what they'll do, they'll get 2 bits of leather. So then they'll boil the leather up, and then they'll put hot sand inside of the leather, and then they'll form a shape. So it's like a vessel with a small enclosure. And I think at some point we'll talk about this, because it's fascinating. And then when they've done that process and the leather sets and forms a shape of, you know, like a canteen. When I think about canteen, I think about American Civil War canteens, or canteens of the, you know, English Civil War and so forth, wooden ones. Then later on they became pewter. And then later on they developed an idea of putting 3 rings in the canteen, because if you've got a smooth canteen and you don't have the 3 pressed rings in it, well, when you fall over because you're being shot by some Johnny Webb, you fall over, you land on your canteen, you squash it. But when you got 3 pressed rings on the outside, it also stops it from being squashed. And then the reason why in the Civil War they got fabric around the canteens, it's very simple. So you got your canteen. It's got a, you know, if you're a Confederate rebel, you're probably a grey canteen cover of wool. If you're a Union man, you probably got, you know, some Union blue covering it. And the idea of that is you soak it with cold water. Now the cold water evaporates on the outside and cools down the water in the inside. So that is the reason, and it's one of those little tricks of the reenactor which we learned, to soak your canteen to cool your water down. And that's such a clever thing. So we've got a comment here from Alivia. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It says, nice shield. Oh, thank you very much. I've got a few shields about. I've got quite a few weapons about. I mean, there's some weapons. There's a sword. You never know when a Saxon's going to come into your house and attack you. So, and I got to sort out some more weapons. They've got a little bit of rust on, because you're forever tidying up. Although this is Merovingian and not Viking. This is a Bretta Broad seax, or Langsax long knife. This is an Anglo-Saxon long knife. This is your typical Viking sword. So, and then you got peasant weapons like clubs. You would have clubs as well. I mean, I'm sure you agree. Get that knocked on your noggin, your head, and you're going to know about it. And I made that years ago. So, you know, if you can't afford a Langsax, if you can't afford a sea axe, then you can have a club. And we can go clubbing later if you like. And then, you know, how about this for a brooch? I mean, that's probably the biggest. That's silver. This is all silver. And this is from, what finds it's from? It's from a hoard, this is. Oh, God. I can't remember what hoard it's from now. It's forgotten. But that's a copy of from a hoard. And that's a massive brooch. And the downside about wearing a brooch like this is that when it's on your cloak, it points up here. You've got this very, very long needle. And if you're not careful, you stab somebody's eye out. This will be hollow. That'll be hollow. And this will be hollow. It's not solid. So they're all cast in halves. And then they very cleverly sold them together. I think it's from the Silverdale hoard replica. And so, again, that demonstrates how wealthy you are as a Viking. And the reason why it's super big is because we're just demonstrating how fantastically wealthy a Viking was to be able to afford one of these. Because he's saying, oh, look at me, lads. I'm not like the average person with a small little, you know, brooch. I got a big sod off one, which kind of demonstrates. There's a normal size brooch, which, you know, you'd have on your cloak. And this used to be a Confederate blanket. I converted into a Viking blanket because the walls are fine. And of course, the one person in Viking and Norse mythology who wore a grey cloak was the god Odin, the All-Father. So that will be your typical type of brooch. And this is what you call a penannular brooch. Then you also have another one called an annular brooch. And the annular brooch has no gap. This has a gap here you can feed through. And this is an iron one. But if you compare that to that kind of saying, yeah, I'm a really wealthy Viking. I can afford to spend money on silver. And I'm sure you agree, that is something awesome. And it also sounds nice. It's got that lovely ringing noise. I mean, that's a good sign of blades. So, there you go. I've got more weapons on my table again, like I did earlier. So, I hope you've enjoyed what we talked about, and I hope you found this to be useful. And do you have any ideas of what you want me to do next in a live stream? Now, at some point, I am going to start thinking about reading you a saga, and it'll probably be a few chapters at a time. I'll read a few chapters, and then perhaps we can talk about it. And you'll probably have me butchering Viking names because I'm not great at pronouncing Viking names and stuff. And I'll give you an exclusive here. I'll show you some else which I'm not opened yet. So we're going to unbox something. And then at some point you'll see it again when it gets unboxed properly on camera. But I'll finish off with this. So I got some nice things in here the other day. I got a very nice brooch. And these are all bronze. There's another nice brooch. And that's like a shield brooch. And you have an animal motif brooch with a bit of enamel. You've got a cloak pin here with a little dragon's head. And you've got what you'll call a box brooch because it's hollow in the inside. So that's some more Viking bling I've got to unbox. So that's an exclusive look to what's going to be opened in the future. But I think I'm waiting to open them when my girlfriend moves in because she wants to join the channel and she's fantastically beautiful. And it's going to be really good for the channel because we've got 91% male audience, and channels generally with ladies in them do better than ones with just men. But that's for another story, another day. And yeah. So Sam says, do you think that would have been for a horse blanket? Well, possibly so. This would have been actually an old army blanket. And a lot of army blankets got released, for sale, so you could buy them really very cheap back in the day. £3 or £4 a blanket. Nowadays, you go online, they're £30-40 each minimum. So this was an old military blanket. I just adapted, and then it's got green thread along. You can't really see the greenness, and I sewn this by hand And at some point, I will find myself another blanket, and I will demonstrate on camera how in a couple of hours you can actually make yourself a cloak. It's one of the most easiest things you can make. Personally, I like a cloak to be double-sided, so you've got 2 bits of wool. So imagine, imagine this bit of material, paper, is a cloak, is your fabric, and you got it to the size you wanted. You basically get 2 bits of wool, and you just go and sew it. You leave a little gap, you put it inside out, you sew up the gap, and you got yourself a nice cloak. And they're so easy to make. And I'll tell you another thing about Viking cloaks is, when it's cold at winter, when you're freezing cold in your bed, you put your Viking cloak on your bed, and by the gods you're warm, because they're so warm and they're so comfy. And I've got quite a few cloaks, and I do love cloaks, and I've made quite a few for friends and given them away over the years. And of course, you can get really fancy cloaks with embroidery. I've not really got that far in my life as a Viking, but you never know. So we've come to the point where I'm going to have to go and do some more work. I've got some videos to edit. I've got to get a bath. I've had my dinner. I had fish and chips earlier from my local chippy. I thought I'll treat myself. I got £10 in my wallet. You know, spent most of that on my fish and chips. But by the God, it was yummy. I ate all the chips. And of course, Vikings didn't have chips because we didn't have potatoes. We'd have to have parsnip chips. This is a whole other subject. And perhaps at some point, I'd like to demonstrate food on the channel, but that's going to be a more complicated thing to get into. But yeah, now does anybody have any questions for me? Whilst I'm still here in my modern clothes. Because if I'm here, I'm more than happy to answer a few questions. If not, I'll be saying good night, or in the old Viking time, it'll be good nacht, or good night in the Viking tongue. But of course, what you should never do, this is one of my tips to anybody who's on YouTube. When you do a video, don't telegraph when you're going to end the video. So there you are, you know, you got a 10-minute video, and 6 minutes in, you say, "Oh, we're getting towards the end of the video now, guys." But you've still got another 4 minutes of your video because you carry on talking. So that's one of the little tips about YouTube, is try not to telegraph in your videos that you're going to end. You know, you should telegraph the end when you're about to end, and you do it. And I'm bad at this myself, because I just telegraphed that myself. But I basically say in telegraph, don't like announce that you're going to end the video and carry on, and that's also a little bit rude as well. And a lot of people would make this mistake, and I've made that mistake. And it's been 7 years we've been on this channel, and I've learned so much. And at some point, I'm going to start making content about how to be successful on YouTube and how to do YouTube, because it's also about spreading the knowledge, isn't it, and the love. And I often describe this channel as being a longship journey. You know, we're still at the stage at the moment where we're still putting the stuff in the longship. We're not started the journey, we're still packing the longship. But at some point when we take off, when we go viral, that longship's going to sail. And I want all you guys to come along on this magical journey, because it's not just my channel, it's your channel as well. And it's your journey as well as my journey. And I think those little words are going to end it. And I just want to say to people, just stay positive during these hard times, because positivity is a wonderful thing. And don't forget, as I often say, you know, there's 2 powerful things in this world and the universe, and that's love and kindness. And we need more of it. So let's spread that about, and we could make a wonderful world and get rid of these 1% elitists that are ruining the world. And, you know, we can make it a wonderful place. I do believe that. So it's a good night from Braggy, good night from me. As we used to say in the videos, it's good night from Egil, and it's a good night from Braggy. But we'll say it the opposite way around. He'll say, Egil would say good night, Braggy. It's a good night from Braggy, and I'll say good night from Egil. And that's we did that because we were both fans of the 2 Ronnies, who were a pair of British comedians in the 70s and 80s. And often we often used to say to Egil, I think the first year, said, well, let's base our videos on a comedy genius. So the first year we did, I think we based ourselves on the 2 Ronnies. Then the year after that, it was Morecambe and Wise. Then the 3rd year, it was Law and Hardy, because that's the way we were. And we liked that comedy laughter side of it. I've just got some more comments. So, man, says Sam, that dragon pin is awesome. It is. I'll put it away now. But I am going to unbox it. That's a little bit exclusive to you guys who've seen this video. And Off to 10 says, thank you, Braggy. Mrs. Egle Thorsson, I will send you a PM when I know the date. Well, please do, and we'll have to try to get together, because I would like to meet you and have a beer with some of our fans. And we will do channel meets in the future, and we will come and visit you in Norway. If you could put us up or help us with that aspect, and that will help as well. Because I know Sam's invited us to Texas, so it's now on my list to travel to Texas. I want to go to Australia and see Treve Tales. I hope he can put us up. And we just want to have a marvellous adventure. And that's going to be the next stage of the channel when me and my girlfriend start travelling and doing these wonderful things, because it's just going to be awesome. And then Sam says, I mean the silver brooch because of the size. Oh, yes, it's just ginormous, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, you could use that as a weapon as well. Let's face it. You have that in your hand. Ooh, that's an Anglo-Norman dead, isn't it? We should have had them at the Battle of Hastings, not Dane axes. Be more sneaky. Yeah. Oh, that's used for a horse blanket. Oh no, that is used for your that is used for your cloak. That's just like saying, oh look, it's a bit like the game me and Egle played with the bead necklaces we had, because we had a competition about how many beads we can get on a necklace and who could outbead themselves. Although back in the times, if you had 2 beads on your necklace, that would have been, you know, very wealthy. And if you was married, then you would have given your beads to your wife, because you let your wife wear the wealth and not yourself. So no, it is designed for a person. But like I said, what used to be on here was a leather cord with a bit of antler, so that when you wore it, the antler actually covered up the pike of it and stopped you from hurting somebody. Because trust me, you could soon poke somebody's eye out, and that would cause serious injury. Luckily it's silver, so at least it's pure metal and it won't cause too much infection. But it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing, and one of many things. So thank you guys for hanging out. We've got lots of more videos to follow. We've got some more Dave the Cat videos, because Dave the Cat is a character that me and Egle created to make our own little stories up, and we really enjoyed doing that. And Ivet's making some funny videos with my suggestions as well, and work together. And we'll do our utmost to remember Egil for the great man and great Viking he was. He would have really made a great president or prime minister, because he would not mess about. Until the next time we meet again, this is farewell, goodbye from me, and I love you guys to bits. So don't forget, oh bloody hell, weapons everywhere.